Hi friends, this is astrologer Michael R Vanderpool, and I'm also a part of the Georgian astrology group online in Georgia, and I've met a lot of good Georgian astrologers or students of astrology, both, in that group over the years. In fact, that's how I met Annie Alicia Sfili, who I posted her photo several times. I love that girl very much. But also today reminded about Leo Freud, that's the name that he went by at the time, who was the administrator of this group. So very quickly, there's Nina from Zugdidi, Georgia, who's attending university in Tbilisi. So what I'll do is from a Magi, that's M-A-G-I, astrology point of view, answer her question, and this was posted on the Georgia astrology group on the Facebook group. It's the astrology group that I know about there in Georgia and have followed for quite a number of years now. So in looking at her chart, it's important to remember that there's a geocentric chart, which is Earth-centered, and also heliocentric, which if there are transits there, we consider that 3 times stronger. If there's astrological transits in general, the Earth-Moon complex of the heliocentric chart is kind of similar to what the Sun is in the geocentric chart. And the Magi astrology chart, or what would be called in a similar term in Western astrology, the birth chart, the natal chart. In Magi astrology, as taught by the Magi Society, we call it the Magi Astro Chart. Unlike Western astrology, we're also looking at the declinations in geocentric chart, and in heliocentric chart, which is the sun-centered chart, we're also looking at the declinations. So instead of only looking at the longitudinal, we're also looking at the latitudes. Just want to make that clear. When we look at Nina Young, as she's going by this name on the forum, and again we're using the Zugdidi Georgia birth city, June 8, 1998 at 8:33 in the morning. So I've got the this is important, well, it's not so much important for Magi astrology, but for some aspects, especially considering the moon, it might change. We're using the -4 time zone for Georgia. Now, so I'm going to start with the geocentric chart, but keep in mind when I move to the heliocentric chart on Nina, the heliocentric chart is much more the outward personality. So her question is on psychological abilities and things like that. This is, very quickly, I want to point out the that this is the Magi Astrology's, the Magi Society's software and charts. And there's that part. So we've got that very clearly. Now, as we move into this, again, this is the birth data that we're using. And one of the first things we're going to look at is the object of the chart, which is very often represented, in this case, the sun. So we've got the sun here in Pisces. That's Nino's sun, so we're going to say that that is Nino, and it is at least a triple conjunction. Now, by Magi astrology orb, that Mars is a little bit outside of that triple conjunction. Western astrology, if we were using Western astrology, might throw that in. A certified Magi astrologer wouldn't even point that out. But if you're following Western, and I say that because this particular group focuses mainly on traditional Western astrology, as I understood. So it would, maybe by some of you using some of your software programs or using Western techniques, you're probably calling that a quadruple conjunction of Vesta. Of course, you're probably not looking at Vesta if you're in the Georgian astrology group, only looking at Western astrology. But as a student of Magi astrology and using the Magi astro bodies, we're also including Vesta. So we've got the conjunction of Vesta, Sun, Mercury, and if you're using Western astrology, although there's an orb there of clearly 4 degrees, Magi astrology is not including that in this conjunction, because they're using a tight 3-degree orb at least in the longitudes here in the geocentric chart. But if you're using Western astrology, it might be different. But in any case, if Mars was a part of that, we would say that she's a very Mars girl. But in Magi astrology, we're not including Mars, so we are going to say that she's a very good friend, can be a genuine with friendship. She could also be very good supporting as not only in friendships, but anything to do with nonprofits, charities, charity organizations, spiritual groups. Very strong for her in terms of anything to do with spirituality or spiritual groups, including yoga groups, for example, or even nonprofits or non-governmental organizations. Mercury means she's a very intelligent, very communicative person who probably would like to, if not already, travel around a lot, to teach, to speak, to write, to think. She's a very mercurial person. Could probably even do well with some acting, if just even as a hobby, and or dealing in cars, or mainly teaching, thinking, writing, speaking, anything to do with Mercury. But with Vesta there, all those symbolisms for Vesta, but it's also very, very strong, good friendship and friendships. So that is very descriptive of who she is. Basically, we would say she's a very Vesta Mercury person, because these two astro bodies or planets and astro bodies aspecting her sun. So you've got Vesta there at 18.1 degrees in Gemini, also Mercury there at 14.6 degrees in that triple conjunction with the Sun at 17.2 degrees Gemini. And then just another degree off of the 3-degree orb that Magi astrology uses, you've got Mars. So if Mars was a part of that, we'd put the Mars energy very much on her, but in Magi astrology we're going to leave that out. So she has those strengths. Also here, if we can use the 8:33 a.m. birth time in the location that her birth chart is being calculated here off of Zugdidi, Georgia, because the moon is moving so fast, we're using the time zone of -4, -4 GMT for that location in Georgia. But you've got Vesta there conjunct Jupiter, but also Moon trine Jupiter. So this would basically make her even the more person with the ability to be able to see the larger patterns, to be able to see the bigger picture. This is somebody that can see patterns, that can analyze well, that can see the bigger picture, that can be an excellent strategist, an excellent planner, an excellent researcher, an excellent super communicator. This also, of course, kind of echoes a little bit of that Mercury Sun that we see there, especially in a research capacity, for example, with nonprofit or even non-governmental organizations, for example, or spiritual, even on spiritual topics, or the metaphysics, for example, would be within the realm of her capabilities. So this Jupiter conjunct Pallas is where I'm getting this ability to see the bigger picture, the bigger patterns. Also, in that Moon is conjunct that Jupiter. This is somebody that can be considered, a lot of divine wisdom, a lot of ability to judge correctly, to see things a little bit with some deeper insight than the average person. So that's another skill or ability she would get from the chart. Also, you've got this, what I'm going through there is the Mars in Gemini, which is a trine that Uranus in Aquarius, and I'm going to pull this up to look exact. And it's actually Mars trine Uranus there, applying at 1.95 degrees. So this is a lot of energy, the ability and the energy to travel the world, for example. And this again is, there's Mars at 10.6 in Gemini, and there is the Uranus at 12.6 in retrograde in Aquarius. It's also somebody can have a special gift or skill in astrology. And this is a very powerful, strong aspect, not so much by the orb, because again, it's applying it at almost 2 degrees, a little bit under 2 degrees. So it's not that tight of an aspect, but it's a powerful aspect in that it's a trine, and it's Mars Uranus. So not only does it give someone the ability, a special gift with the skill of astrology, or in some areas of astrology, it gives them the energy, the pure energy to travel the world, or to master anything in the realm of Uranus, entertainment, flying, aeronautics. It's a very independent type of energy. They strive for independence or are independent. If not, they will usually be on the road to growing more independent in thinking, acting, or in living. But it's also somebody that can be a forceful speaker, like a powerful sports broadcaster or just a powerful, strong speaker, someone that can be very strong in speaking, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's to groups, or whether it's in sports broadcasting, for example. So these are some of the energies involved with that. With Mercury also there separating, but also that Uranus being in trine to that Mercury, but that Mercury is also as part of that triple conjunction that I pointed out when we first started here in describing Nino's personality. So you've got Mercury applying trine to Uranus, but again, that being Mercury being in a triple conjunction with the Sun and Venus. So very much Uranus is impacting not only her Mercury, but her, as that Mercury is in a triple conjunction with the Sun and Vesta. So this is somebody that is a very, again, revolutionary or independent thinker. They don't think like everybody else. They don't. And that's a very strong element of what that is, because Mercury is ruling her thinking, and it's much more than the average or the next person because of the fact that it is a big part of who she is. It's Mercury and Vesta. And not only because she is the Sun in this chart, and not only is Mercury and Vesta a big part of who she is because it's conjunct with her, but also Uranus, that Mercury is trine that Uranus. So it's a lot about independent thinking, almost esoteric, or not esoteric so much as eccentric. Eccentric is the word that I was actually looking for there. So it's someone that thinks very uniquely, very independently, just a brilliant thinker. And again, that's all the more in addition to this aspect that I'm focused in on right now, which is Jupiter conjunct Pallas. This is someone that can see the bigger picture, the bigger patterns, and in that the moon is trine that Pallas Jupiter conjunction. It's someone that can have an element of protection and luck too, whether that's just by nature or naturally, or whether she positions herself in that way, or whether cosmos or the universe just kind of sort of arranges things that way, or that's just how the way things play out. This is someone that can be very protected, and that's assuming that when we use the moon, it has to be an exact birth time, and in this case we're using 8:33 a.m. and that we've got the time zone correct, because if not, we can't use aspects to the moon or with the moon because those are moving very quickly. Now here's another one. I'm going to turn the video sideways so we can see this Mars that I pointed out that's in Gemini, that is in quincunx to Chiron here at 13.4 degrees in Scorpio. This is someone that, and also we need to point out that it's in a 3-planet synchronization with Mercury there. Actually, again, that Mercury is in a triple conjunction with the moon Vesta. So this is in a triple conjunction, and I'm going to point that here in the planetary grid. There is the Mars quincunx Chiron, and I'm going to go over there and look and see how this Mercury fits in this this 3-planet synchronization, which is Mercury quincunx Chiron. So you've got Mercury applying quincunx to Chiron, and you've got Mars applying quincunx to Chiron. So this is someone with a lot of energy. This is someone that is thinking, speaking, and moving about a lot. They have pure energy, and it can be a little bit of an ebb and flow, maybe, if you want to consider that the 150-degree angle that Mars is coming into natal Chiron and making that, and kind of, some might consider it an ebb and flow. Others would consider this a kind of, at times, a very confrontational energy. In fact, being that Mars is applying and Mercury is applying, but separating from Chiron, that means that it's someone that can be a little bit too aggressive sometimes. It can be a little bit too confrontational, but it gives them the ability to think about innovative ideas, incredibly insightful, deeply innovative, and freedom-oriented, liberating, independent, and sometimes on issues of family or career, or and even to want to counsel or advise others. Sometimes maybe a bit too much with that Mars energy in there. But it's sometimes the downside can be that there's so much energy that if you don't spend that energy, you'll end up being belligerent or aggressive or almost a nuisance or annoyance. So you've got to spin that energy and keep an eye on that energy, because your level of energy is so high and so abundant, and in such in such abundance that you'll want to maybe even talk too much or share too much with someone. You have to have a pretty good variety of friends to spend that with, or activities or exercises, or a way to funnel or spin that energy, because a lot of the people around you won't have your level of energy or your intellect to be able to handle that. So that has a lot to do with this Mars quincunx Chiron, and it can be a confrontational energy once again, so you have to be careful about being too confrontational or being around people that can't handle your level of intellect, your level of communication, your need, your amount of communication. So that's nothing bad, it's just you're different than everyone else, and that's one of your gifts, but it can be one of your weaknesses if it's not spent correctly. So that's something to watch out for. In a positive sense, in Magi astrology, for example, we see there's a Chiron opposition the Venus here, and that means that in Magi astrology, even though that's a stress aspect in the birth chart, we're not looking, or the Magi astro chart, we're not looking at that as a stress aspect. We're looking at that as a positive. So that's in the sense of being able to be a much more romantic person, also being someone that's even into the New Age, or that can understand the New Age or New Age concepts, and someone that will have probably a much better go at matters in romance or love, especially true love or soulmate type of relationships. But also the New Age being something that you would be able to understand or find interesting at one point or another for the longer duration of your life. So this is just a quick view of the of some of the aspects of the geocentric chart in Magi astrology. Also, we're looking at there's a Saturn clash Neptune in there, so there's a greater importance on the need to watch out for matters of health and taking care of health, and being aware of the fact that there's need to sleep because of the amount of mental energy involved. This is a Saturn square Neptune that you were born into. The idea that you need to be sure to get enough sleep. So a good practice, for example, might even be a meditation, for example, to slow down the thoughts. Or some people might drink wine, some may not. That may not be appropriate at all for some people, especially if they have a tendency toward alcoholism or addictiveness or anything to do with the contraindications for alcohol. But some people drink valerian tea, or some people do. But actually the meditation, the right type of meditation, where you're slowing down the thoughts before sleep, or any practice, good music, but resting, getting off electronics devices, making electronics curfew to make sure that you're getting away from too much thinking or too many thoughts before bedtime. Because also the appropriate rest, the appropriate amount of balance with activity, whether it's physical activity, whether it's mental activity, is going to be very, very important for you, because that Saturn square Neptune, although we're going to look at that positively in a Magi astrology chart kind of way, we also want to make sure that that doesn't come up as a challenge to health issues. And in your case, I've just pointed out some of the possible challenges with health. On a positive note, that Chiron Venus energy that I had pointed out in the longitudes can also be seen in the latitudes here, which is a Venus contra-parallel Chiron. And so we're going to double up everything that I had said earlier about the Venus Chiron energy, because it makes that a bi-level aspect, and that it's in the geocentric declination chart as well as the longitude, which was what I pointed out before. So we've got that going on, but also moon parallel Chiron is someone that is, again, that can be very much in tune with their emotions, and someone that can actually, you want to probably look at either investing in real estate, or I don't know if you'll want to work with any of the aspects of the real estate industry, but in terms of a financial interpretation, I could very well easily interpret it as that. Visibly, just looking into the chart off the grid, but just at the chart itself, we see that there's an aspect here between Chiron and the moon. This is someone that can be very in touch and in tune with their own feelings and emotions, but also those of others. So it's important with your type of, Mercury Sun and Chiron Mercury, that 3-planet synchronization, that you be sure not to be too intellectual, but you also allow yourself to rely on your very feminine but very rich and very real intuition, very real ability to be in tune and in touch with others' emotions, others' feelings, but you're going to have to slow down and really pay attention and tune into that sometimes, because you're so revved up at times with the Mars applying to Chiron that can be a challenge for you. So that's something that's going to be helpful to note, that it's right there. You were born with it. That is that aspect of, I'm going to point it out here with my finger, that's Chiron, and this is the moon. So this gives you a lot of intuition, a lot of deep intuition, almost an old soul type of intuition. And that Chiron's actually in sync, again, the 3-planet synchronization. They're in geocentric declinations with the Venus. And that Venus is also aspect the moon. So this, again, you just double up, at least maybe triple up that amount of intuition, because that's also in a 3-planet synchronization. You've got the moon to Chiron and moon to Venus there. This is someone that can be very, very intuitive. But what I'm picking up intuitively and also logically using Magi astrology, both, is that you can be too intellectual, you can be too revved up on your thoughts. You're so brilliant and you're so deeply insightful that you can forget to just go with how you feel or how you're sensing and picking up that somebody else is feeling. So it's important for you to pick up and pay attention to the other person, to slow down, to get out of your head, to get out of your intellect, especially before sleep, because it's going to affect your health if you don't. There's very good probability that you will be one of these people that need to get, turn off the Wi-Fi for health, turn off the devices, get away from the blue light, get a blue light filter on your phone or your laptop or whatever devices you're using so that you don't harm your eyes. Because Mercury there with the sun, it does rule eyes a lot, and a lot to do with eyeglasses and eyesight, and this is something you'll need to take care about yourself, because it's more emphasized, it's more affected here with all of these planetary synchronizations affecting the Mercury with the moon conjunct Vesta. So you've got to take good care of your eyesight as well. But not only that, but especially because of the amount of pure energy that I pointed out earlier coming from the Mars-Chiron aspect, and this triple conjunction with Mercury in there being a part of that, also applying to Chiron. So there's very big benefits to that. If you have any propensity to be drawn to not only the art, but to beautifying places, things, businesses, people, places, or things, you should very much try that, because that's part of the Venus conjunct Ceres there. Ceres representing business, often in the Magi, as a Magi astrology and an astro body, and that's also here in the Magi Astro chart in aspect with Chiron. So this is a very big possibility for you in terms of career. There's a few other aspects here also to take care about your risk taking, because there's an element of risk taking involved with the Saturn contra-parallel Pluto there, and a need to watch out for, to make sure in your life that you have a good steady investments in real estate properties. Rental properties would be very good for you, but also investments in other fixed or immovable properties, so that it'll give you something for the long term that can't be quickly sold or removed, but that gives you a consistent financial growth. I wouldn't say mutual fund per se, but certain types of real estate or other certain types of investments that will give you a steady income over the long term. Like in Swiss annuities is another example, but any of those types of things. Some people consider what would be ongoing long-term over the 10, 20, 30, 50 years retirement type of investments that is going to pay you steadily. And I say that because the aspect of Saturn clash Pluto is not only a risk factor, and you need to double, triple check when you want to take something that everybody's like, hey, that's risky, watch out for that. You have to be careful about risk. Risk is a part of naturally who you are. You're going to be the risk taker if you're not already. But you need to double, triple check with people that are grounded and that know your plans, and that know that not every risk is worth taking. Some certainly are, however. But with investing with a Saturn-Pluto aspect in the geocentric declinations chart, I would pay heavier, closer attention to getting a good financial planner or analyst later, or at least invest in some things that can pay you back steadily, that you won't touch over a 30 or 40-year period, that are going to pay for, help in, be an investment that you can hold on to into retirement, whether for you individually or for your family. It's going to be 10 times more important in your case. Now I've come over to the heliocentric chart there. You've got the Mercury conjunct Mars, and this is the heliocentric chart, so we're going to give this the more outward part of your personality, and that Mars is at 6.2 Gemini, and that Mercury here, as you can see, is at 6.0 Gemini. And I'm going to pop up the planetary grid to make exact there. I'm able to show you that that's Mercury conjunct Mars applying at 0.17, so that's a very tight orb. So you can be somebody who not only has all these things I was talking about on the other side here in the geocentric chart of being thinking too much, thinking not necessarily too much, but at times it can be too much, especially before bedtime. So for your health, you have to cut that out, give yourself a break, get into some sort of meditation or some sort of teas or valerian or whatever it is that is appropriate for your health and your situation to help you to calm down before bed, stop thinking so much. And also around certain people, you can be too, you can speak too aggressively. And you have to watch out for that, because that'll ruin relationships or complicate things in ways that, if you haven't learned that already, be aware that that's something that you'll deal with until you master that and control that for possibly all your life. But if you master it and learn to channel it or control it, or you're aware of it, that's not just a coincidence. You were born with this, and there it is. So you can choose to master and deal with that how you wish, but it's good to learn to control that, speaking too aggressively or speaking actually too much or thinking too aggressively or too much at times. The positives are immense, but there's the negative side to it. Now you've got a wonderful Cinderella. This is actually a 3-planet synchronization, a Cinderella aspect that you're born with here, and that is actually, I would call that a super Cinderella, and that is that you've got the Venus conjunct Jupiter applying trine to Chiron here. So you've got that going on, and that's a super Cinderella in what I would call a super Cinderella you're born with. There's the Venus applying trine to that natal Chiron, also Jupiter applying trine in the Magi astro chart here. So that is a 3-planet synchronization of Venus and Jupiter applying trine to that natal Chiron, and that's really nice to have. I mean, separately, Venus to Chiron is a Cinderella aspect. Jupiter applying to Chiron separately is a Cinderella aspect. I might call that a super Cinderella aspect. There may not be an actual technical term for that. You have to look that up. But that is a very wonderful, nice Cinderella energy that you were born with in both senses of the Venus Chiron and the Jupiter Chiron. This is somebody that's probably more than likely going to enjoy a very rich, very real and loving family with children and true love and all the wonderful things that are involved with having a wonderful, soulful, blessed family. So all that's there in the heliocentric chart. It's also somebody that can be, very Cinderella-like, if not already in their life at some point in their life, whether a relationship or a job or a career or a business or a project or a situation or absolutely a relationship, one or more, could bring you, or a partnership, one or more, could bring you into a Cinderella status if you weren't already born into that Cinderella type of life or type of family or type of situation. We move further here into the heliocentric latitudes. There is a Neptune aspect Uranus there. These are both an aspect to, let me check to make sure with the planetary grid there, Mars contraparallel Uranus and Mars parallel Neptune. So these are also, once again, that's kind of a transdimensional energy there of the Mars Uranus. Again, you've got a special gift for astrology, and applying at 0.11 degrees there, that's a very tight aspect on you. And in heliocentric declinations, it's even all the more stronger. That we would consider that a genius orb. So you're somebody you've got a lot of energy. You could travel the world, long-term energy, not just like energy for a day or two or a few weeks. This is lifelong. This is the ability to travel the world. This is a world traveler's energy. In fact, I have the same. And it also gives you the ability to develop or have a special, unique gift and mastery of astrology, as well as not only world travel, but again, the ability to speak very forcefully, very strongly. And again, with this aspect here of Mars conjunct Mercury in Gemini, you've got to be very careful not to be too forceful or too confrontational with people, either intellectually, in an intellectual joust or jousting, so to speak, but just purely in terms of just speaking too strongly. And even though it might be natural for you to do so, some people, especially in your culture and your society, that's very sensitive to that. They're not well adapted to that at all.